Hey, good morning, everybody. We got a good number of us showing up so far. I expect we'll have a few more. I got a few quick announcements before we get started. But first off, Happy New Year to everyone. Hope you've had a good break during this time here at the sort of the end of the year. Another thing I need to do is just remind everyone to rename themselves. It looks like everyone's in pretty good shape doing that. And if you need assistance with that, as always, the tech team is here to help you out. I got to talk about volunteer management system data. You can still enter your service or continuing ed hours and or both by January 7th. If you haven't already done it, I appreciate those folks that have done it in a timely manner. It's great. I appreciate that. Immensely. But it is extremely important that you do enter your time and hours in there. We haven't really closely looked at our membership list because of COVID and other issues that we've had. But we are going to look at the membership list and the number of folks who have maybe volunteered or have not volunteered a little more closely this time around. So it is important that you do enter your hours in. It's not something, please don't take for granted. It is important. It helps to justify our existence and let other folks know that what we do. So again, I reiterate, please enter your service and continuing ed hours if you haven't already done so by January 7th. Shortly after that, we're going to look at the hours. We'll also have to generate reports for the state and other places. So we need to get that data in. The only other major thing I have on my announcement is list is classes at Montgomery College. They're going to be starting again this spring semester at the end of this month, at January 22nd is the first day. Senior registration is January 17th. If you're all interested in looking at classes at MC, let me know if you have any questions. We have a combination of face-to-face, online. We have a plant propagation class that's going to meet face-to-face. There's a number of greenhouses, to wide variety of different kinds of plant propagation techniques, landscape management, a couple courses on plant materials, going on a number of field trips, course on introduction to sustainable landscaping on Monday nights online. So if you're interested in any of those courses, reach out to me, please. And at this point, I'm ready to hand the baton over to Renew.
Thank you, Steve. Happy New Year, everyone. I hope all of you had a relaxing holiday break and looking forward to getting back into the garden after this cold weather that we're having. Certainly planning what will be happening this spring at our place. I just have one announcement today, and that's in regards to the Garden Discovery Day. So what we called Children's Day last year is now called Garden Discovery Day. It's a program where we invite over 250 children from grades K through 12 to specially develop programs regarding gardens and learning more about it. The Garden Discovery Day will be held on April 27th, and for the first time it will be held at the fairgrounds. There will be many volunteer opportunities, and it would be great for experienced master gardeners and interns looking for something to own for a while. All hours will count and are approved for interns and experienced master gardeners. It's a great time to get involved from the very beginning of the program, since we're just planning this event at a new location. So the types of opportunities that are available include project manager, event organisers, and pop-up garden organisers and designers. So keep an eye out for today's written announcements for a more detailed description of these positions. And if you're interested, please contact Terry Valenti via email or call or text her phone. Hopefully you'll be able to join the volunteer group that will be supporting Garden Discovery Day. And with that, I will transition to Gloria for the acknowledgements for the month.
You, Renew. Good morning, everyone. We're beginning the new year by recognizing the Montgomery County Master Gardener Program, Master Gardener Board, and the program directors for 2024. So with that, we start with our president, Renew Murick. Renew co-chairs our monthly membership meetings and chairs the monthly board meetings. She also communicates with Steve Dubick, our Master Gardener Coordinator, to support and promote the Montgomery County Master Gardeners mission. And next we have Linda Barrett, the first Vice President, who stands in for Renew in her absence. Linda oversees the program directors and updates the governance flow and structure charts, and she introduces the speaker at our monthly meetings and plans upcoming meetings, and she's responsible for the formation of the nominating committee and its activities. Dave Ottolani is the second vice president. He solicits and compiles committee reports for the Master Gardener annual report, creates statistical and other reports requested by the board, and he also secures and organizes meeting spaces for the board and general membership meetings. And next is our secretary, Carol Kosery. Carol prepares minutes of board meetings for approval by the board and distributes the minutes on our Master Gardener website. She calls for announcements for general membership meetings, summarizes and publishes the meeting announcements on the website. And Danielle Brabazon is the treasurer. Danielle formulates the budget based on proposals submitted by program directors. She collects and maintains records of financial transactions, prepares monthly, year-to-date summary income and expense reports for board meetings. And Chris Cotter. Chris is the intern class representative. She serves as liaison between the board and interns, keeping fellow interns informed and bringing any concerns they may have to the board. Michael Pariser is the immediate past president, serving as advisor to the president and the board. Michael shares his knowledge on activities that occurred during his term, and this is very helpful. And next, we recognize our program directors. The program directors are directly involved with their committees or activities, and not only do they oversee them, but they participate along with other Master Gardeners to accomplish their goals. So beginning with Beth Myers, Beth is the program director for information tables and education. Beth is well acquainted or involved in plant clinics, community events, urban gardening, and in the garden with Melissa. And Hilliard is program director of hands-on education, involved with Baywise, food rescue and gleaning, therapeutic horticulture, and youth gardening programs. Nicola Barnes is program director of demonstration gardens, and there are many. The list includes Nature Forward, Belle Dawson Garden, Durwood Demo Garden, Fairgrounds Demo Garden, National Library of Medicine, NLM Demo Garden, and the USO Garden at Walter Reed. Blair Zucker is program director of major education events. Those events include Garden Discovery Day, Close Encounters with Agriculture, CEWA, Harvest Festival, Speakers Bureau, and the Spring Conference. And finally, Ryan Haley is program director of Master Gardener Communication. This list includes The Seed, our newspaper, our newsletter, social events, intern hospitality, and public relations. We appreciate each of our board members and program directors for their leadership and hard work throughout the year. Thank you for all you do.
Great. Thanks, Gloria. And now it's time for me to introduce our speaker. Naomi Edelson is the Senior Director of Wildlife Partnerships with the National Wildlife Federation. Naomi is an inspirational leader in the wildlife conservation community who is gifted at building movements of people inspired to action. As Senior Director for Wildlife Partnerships at the National Wildlife Federation, She leads their partnerships related to securing greater funding to prevent wildlife from becoming endangered, for state and tribal wildlife agencies, focusing on the coalition building elements of the Recovering America's Wildlife Act campaign. She has also led efforts to incorporate climate change into agency conservation planning. This included creating and co-leading 3 expert work groups, including natural and nature-based features for resiliency, climate smart conservation, and vulnerability assessment, which led to the award-winning guidance reports and associated trainings. She developed the first climate change adaptation webinar series for national resource managers in partnership with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. She works with the National Wildlife Federation's Gardening for Wildlife programs to restore the wildlife habitat where people live, work, learn, play, and worship, including the creation of the Native Plant Finder and founding and leading Sacred Grounds, a program for faith communities with her focus in our Metro DC area, including Maryland's largest and most diverse population counties. She's a member of Adat Shalom Reconstructionist Congregation, where she led their green teams for many years. In the past, she was a board member of Shomri Adaman, a Jewish environmental group in Washington, D.C. area. Naomi is a wildlife biologist with a master's from the University of Florida, where she studied wading birds and wetlands, and a bachelor's from the University of Massachusetts at Amherst. Naomi lives with her husband and 16-year-old son in Tacoma Park, Maryland. Today's talk is about the Sacred Grounds, which partners with congregations of all faiths to care for creation through gardening with native plants. The aim is to create wildlife habitat and reduce stormwater runoff, helping people and wildlife in an era of climate change. So she does work with congregations to help create native plant wildlife friendly gardens on their grounds and engage the members to plant native plants at home. She works with multi-faith cohorts, including churches, mosques, and synagogues to create a bigger impact in the watersheds. This year, they will pilot a new project creating Tree of Life native plant gardens. Sacred Grounds is a program of the National Wildlife Federation Garden for Wildlife program, helping people enjoy and conserve wildlife wherever they are for the past 50 years. So welcome, Naomi.
Thank you, Linda, and thank you, Renu, who I met at her church, where we were giving away native plants, and we made a great connection. And Steve, who invited me to speak to all of you. And what a great crowd you have! That's amazing for 10 a.m. the first week of the new year, when some people are even still on vacation. It's really quite astonishing to me that you have such a great turnout. So thank you very much for having me be able to share our program called Sacred Grounds with you today. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen right now and start the program. But I would also like to join everybody in saying Happy New Year. Okay, so as was already explained a little bit, but I'm going to walk through what we do with our congregations and how we have created this amazing partnership with congregations all over what I call the DMV area is where we started it, but it's also, we do this in other parts of the country, and it's been a phenomenal, inspirational, personally inspirational, and otherwise for everybody involved, a big community, joyful, purposeful effort that I think is a really winning strategy to bring together gardening and the faith community and really making a difference for wildlife and people. And that's the gist of our program, this idea of caring for creation, and planting native plants to help people and wildlife. It takes a second. Here we go. Let me just get the. Now, National Wildlife Federation, which is based here in the Washington, D.C. region, our headquarters. I work out of the Washington, D.C. office, but the National Wildlife Federation has had a program called Gardening for Wildlife forever, since 1973. It's really quite amazing because a lot of other groups have taken that on, which is great, more the merrier. But we've had a long-standing program doing this. And it typically has focused on engaging people where they live, work, play, and learn, and getting them to create wildlife habitat on their garden, on their properties. But we did expand it in 2012 to include worship. And that's what the Sacred Grounds program is. And of course, as many of you probably already know, really all faiths have some connection, and some faiths call it caring for creation, but all faiths have some connection with nature built into their faith. And there's all kinds of examples of that. And me as a, and many who are as a Jew, it starts with Genesis, where we talk about caring for the earth right at the beginning. But here's an example of a St. Camilla's Church in right on the edge of Montgomery County, Prince George's, which is focused on St. Francis, who of course is very well known for his caring about the animals. And they have that right on their church property with beautiful mosaic here. And our job is really about encouraging people and helping people understand that planting native plants is what caring for creation, partly what it is about. And that this idea, by doing that, you're caring for wildlife and people. And here's a picture of my son at my synagogue where we planted some native plants a long time ago. So I know in this crowd, you probably all know this, but, just want a reminder, a native plant is a species that has naturally evolved in a region and thrives in that soil and weather. And that the key part is that native plants and native wildlife have evolved together and rely on each other for survival. And that's why we have an interest in this. And the Sacred Grounds program has many elements to it, including really this idea of beautifying the grounds, but in a sustainable way. And we'll talk a lot more about that. Preparing and coping with climate change, more and more present. And unfortunately, it looks like we aren't going to get the snowstorm. I think it's unfortunate. And we'll get just rain. And that's influenced by climate change, most likely. And it's about cleaning our waterways, and it's about creating wildlife habitat. And of course, it can result, and often does result, in saving money. But really, the key thing is it's a way to put your faith into practice. We did start with 3 congregations, one in a Lutheran church in Gaithersburg, and my synagogue, Adat Shalom, in Bethesda, and then also a church in Anacostia, a Baptist church. And here's my rabbi giving a blessing when we were we had this big stormwater pond, this very ugly area that nobody liked. Everyone hated it, an eyesore. And we planted 2,500 native plants in the area and made it into something very beautiful. Don't ask me the backstory because there's now like a problem with it, maintenance, and you probably all have that experience as gardeners too. But so the first 5 years, we really focused on this idea of reaching a lot of congregation leaders at once. And we did a lot of why and how workshops, and we focused a lot on how congregations can get the county's Rainscapes Reward rebate, which my synagogue was able to do, get $10,000. And of course, it's jumped up to $20,000 now. So there was so much interest. I don't know if anybody here was there, but we found a lot of interest. And it was a big partnership and funded by the Chesapeake Bay Trust. And here's Ann English from Montgomery County's Rainscapes program talking about it. And here's a church Colesville United Methodist Church, putting in a native plant garden. And then we switched later, right before the pandemic, to this idea of working much more closely with congregations one-on-one. And we are finding we're reaching it's a much more intensive approach, but it's leading to a lot more follow-up and actual changing the behavior of how people manage their gardens on their property, congregation grounds, and at home. And we've really built in a very structured, the social science of behavior change to do that. And we've been focusing on much smaller, much fewer congregations, but we believe with more long-standing impact. We have many partners. It's not just us. We're working with the Regional Department of Environments. We're working a lot with Interfaith Power and Light, Interfaith Partners for the Chesapeake, Friends of Sligo Creek, Defensoros de la Cuenca. We work with, funded by the Chesapeake Bay Trust and the Wildlife Conservation Society. And we are really focused now, and I'm going to walk through these slides more quickly, on a program with congregations. And I just want to say here, I'm hoping at the end, some of you who are members of congregations might be interested in either working with us as part of your congregation, or if you're not part of one, then you might be willing to help some of these congregations do this gardening work, because we're finding that we're reaching so many people who are not actually gardeners, and definitely not all master gardeners. So there's a particular role that you could play if you wish. So I'm hoping that some of you might be interested in that. So our program is basically why plant native plants, right? Inspirational. Why would you even care about doing that? How to do it, because people are worried about that. They think it's different than other gardening, which in a lot of ways it can be, but it isn't. And then we do a native plant garden tour to show them how beautiful they are. And we do a massive event where we give away some plants, and I'll talk more about that. And we do a garden planting, and we do garden maintenance days. So we have a whole year-long program to work with congregations. And the congregation has a big role. Again, this is a very intensive approach. They host the events, they organize them all, and they're very, they have a green team. It's very involved, but we provide a lot of expertise and materials and the plants, and we give them an honorarium to be part of it, to help fulfill the program. And so I'm just going to run through a bunch of pictures to give you a flavor of it. But the garden tours, we really start with the green team leaders, because they're the ambassador to their congregation. And we really want them to catch the magic of it and see how beautiful. A lot of people don't realize they may even have native plants in their yard. In fact, we ask them that, and many of them have no idea. So we show them, and some of you might recognize Gage in the background. She is with Friends of Sligo Creek, and she's been one of our native plant experts, leading a lot of the walks and leading the how-to and other aspects of it. But we show people what it looks like, so they have a feel for that, and it doesn't feel so overwhelming or different. And we get a great turnout. People really want to see this. They're excited about it, and we get a chance to also build relationships with them. We hold these presentations, and here's an example of one we did of the Imam Center. These are all going to be Montgomery County congregations, and they got 70 people to show up on a Saturday night for a presentation on why plant native plants. It was amazing. It was a credible community to work with, and they've continued to be a major partner for us. So we talk about what are the problems in our area and why native plants are a part of the solution, and then how they can help. And we talk about it from two main angles, which is really about slowing the flow, reducing flooding and pollution, which helps people and wildlife, and also about the biological diversity. So we talk a lot. I'm not gonna share all the details with you, because many of you know this, but we do have beautiful rivers in here, and we have huge problems with flooding. and that we know that here's my Sligo Creek. I live just a couple blocks from Sligo Creek. I took this picture after one big rainstorm. It was amazing, right? This is phenomenal, how much flooding. And that we know that it's increasing with climate change. In our region, we have more precipitation, more frequently and more intensely. And this is happening a lot. And it's happening to people's homes, and it's happening to our parks. And that this is very problematic with the pollution. And it's the problem in our region. A lot of it is now about this non-point source pollution, where lawns are like concrete with shallow roots that don't hold the water, don't slow it down, and pollutants that lead to this increased stormwater runoff. And that's the whole idea. And many of you have probably seen this famous picture. Now, not all natives have bigger longer roots, but typically they do have longer roots than non-natives. It's not solely like this. And I'm not going to, I know gardeners, you'll know that. But because they have these longer roots, typically they longer than turf grass, certainly, they hold the water and they filter the pollution, and they slow the flow of the water running off into the creeks. Now, Sligo Creek is the creek that we started with, and more intensely, and it's a beloved creek. It has this 10-mile path along it that people use intensely. And Jamie Raskin, our congressman from, I'm sure I think probably all of Montgomery County, but I'm not sure exactly, he has a picture of Sligo Creek right in his office. And of course, he lives in Tacoma Park, so we always see him on the July 4th parade, but he cares deeply about Sligo Creek and wildlife. And so do others. And this creek has been very degraded. We live in one of the worst parts. Sligo Creek is one of the worst creeks in Montgomery County. And it's had big problems, and the county has invested a lot in repairing our local creeks. And that has been good because they've actually had a return of a lot of the fish, and it's doing much better. But also, we encourage, of course, people to plant native plants to create wildlife habitat. And we know America's wildlife is at risk. We have so many species already endangered, and many, many more, unfortunately, in the pipeline. And a prominent example is, the monarch decline, which has really captured a lot of people's attention. It's much like the passenger pigeon, where it was so abundant, so common everywhere, and now people don't see it. It is still there, but it is most likely about to be formally listed as endangered, which is really a very sad story. But many of our bumblebees are also in trouble, our bees in general, and there's been a huge outcry and a real love to create these pollinator gardens for them, which is great because lawns are also like concrete for wildlife, where they have no food for pollinators, birds, or others. And that's, a lot of this idea is based on, I'm sure many of you are familiar with Dr. Doug Tallamy, the entomologist at the University of Delaware, who created a big native plant movement. He's one of the biggest ambassadors, and he wrote a book about bringing nature home and trying to get people to plant native plants. And the key part for the wildlife is that it turns out most birds rely on caterpillars to feed their young, and including, like the chickadee, a simple common bird, they need up to 9,000 caterpillars in a 3-week period when their babies are being raised. That's a lot of protein. They need it quickly, and the birds are out of the nest fast, and they need those caterpillars. And if those native plants aren't there, there are the caterpillars. And Doug Tallamy has really pioneered this work to show that specific plants are even more important, specific native plants are even more important than other plants to provide caterpillars to provide the bird food. And we see here that there's like goldenrods and asters and sunflowers that are like the sort of superfoods. He calls them keystone species, but they are like the superfood of plants. But the other plants that are from Asia or from Europe, or perhaps from Africa, that typically are often, particularly these English plants, are in our yards. Somebody was talking about boxwood. They have almost no value for caterpillars. They will not be the host plant for caterpillars, and they do not provide food for all kinds of wildlife. So we have really embraced this idea that native plants are better and beautiful, and that they can be an oasis. Creating them in your yard is not about having a bad yard, but having a beautiful yard, an oasis for people and wildlife. And that by doing this, even at small scale, yard by yard, all together, we can make a big difference for people and wildlife. So we give these presentations to every congregation that participates to inspire them to want to plant native plants. And then at the presentation, during it, we get them to make a pledge, and we have a link where people have to pledge, and they have a drop-down menu to each of their congregations, and they pledge within their own congregation. So they're doing something as part of a community, and they pledge to plant native plants to help people and wildlife. And then we do a giveaway. Every congregation takes all those pledges, and we give away a starter kit of 3 to 6 native plant plugs, and they give them away to their members, and as a way to add plants to their garden that are native plants, as a low barrier introduction to planting with native plants. And it's phenomenally successful. We call it Planting Hope. And here's some pictures. Here's Tacoma Park. They had a line. Can you see that? They had a line of people who wanted the plants. And we had, I don't know if you can see, we had Mark Elrich, the county executive, show up and get some free plants at another church. Some kids took advantage of it and sold marketed the fact that they were available to do planting, gardening at people's houses. So it was like a little jobs opportunity for them. And even rain or shine, congregations have been doing this, and they get a green team together and they give out the plants to their members. And here's that one I showed the presentation, the Imam Center. They've been phenomenally successful. And that woman in the middle, Jennifer, with the reddish shirt, she has become an avid native plant gardener because of this work. And again, we had Mark Elridge show up. It's great. We're encouraging him to learn about the program and to support it, since it's funded by Montgomery County. And here's a church that I met Renu at, which is St. Rose of Lima, has several large services on Sundays. And we had people come out right after service, and we gave away the native plants, and we had terrific response to that. And here's the church, the clergy who loved the program and was talking about it. And we give them material. We explain what the plants are, which ones they are, and how to plant them, where to get more information, and how to care for them, which is because, like I said, many of these people are first-time gardeners. We weren't expecting that, but that's what we've learned. People are eager to participate. And then we do have a workshop on how to create rain gardens and wildlife habitat. We want people to understand there's money available if they want to do a larger garden on their congregation grounds. They get up to $20,000 or at home. So we bring in some experts like Ann English and others to talk about how to do that. And it's really, many people, I know this program is like routinely sold out now, the Rainscapes program, but they, during the pandemic, everyone wanted to re-engage in gardening, but we really promote that program as a way to do something on a bigger scale. Here's another church we worked with, St. Michael's Church. You've seen this by maybe Whole Foods, and they put in a small native plant garden. They use this Green Team leader's son did it as an Eagle Scout project, and they have a beautiful, small but beautiful garden, and they actually then expanded to do 2 more. So it's really having an impact. And here's the county coming to review a site on this mosque, and then the mosque really took on a big project. They had a huge number of volunteers come out. And then they even provided lunch after, which was really nice. It's really a community effort, and it really builds community, engages community, which I think the congregations really respond to as well. And so, we do this because we know people love gardening, they love nature, they want to make a difference, and we believe this really leads to making a difference. And we have shown that with our research, that we have learned from the surveys we're doing by the people who pick up the plants, that it actually is not just raising awareness, but changing their behavior. And we learned that 88% who picked up the plants planted the plants, and 65% said they were likely or very likely to plant native plants in the coming year. And 33% already, by the time we did the survey, already planted more native plants because of this program. And here's some of the other results. How likely are you to plant native plants within the coming year? And then we asked, what's your level of experience? And 50% or 55% said they were experienced or very experienced. But I think what's amazing is look at those numbers that were inexperienced with gardening. That's almost 43%. So that's a big deal that we inspired those people to actually want to do this. And we do know, again, that we asked the question, how many of you would take a bigger step to not just add a few plants to your garden, but to actually replace the lawn or portion of the lawn with native plants? And this is most astonishing. 71% said they're interested in doing it. And a really high number said they would do rain gardens or conservation landscaping. So I'm just wrapping up the last couple slides here. Currently, we just are starting working with a new cohort of 6 congregations in Rockville and Gaithersburg. And we're going to do those 2 last ideas. We're going to not just start with giving them the starter kit of a few native plants to add to their home, but then we're going to work with them in an 18-month period. And the second phase, the second spring, we're going to give them, those who pledge to do this advanced behavior, we'll give them a bigger kit of more than 3 or 6 plants, like much bigger, 30 plants, to actually convert their lawn. So not just add the plants to their existing garden. And then we're piloting this new idea of working with Doug Tallamy on this, a tree of life understory garden. So wherever you have existing trees, where you have existing trees, you would create a spring ephemeral garden of native plants that will be particularly helpful for the early bees that come out, but also importantly, decompact the lawn, usually soil area under trees that have been in yards for a long time, allowing more water to percolate and allowing the caterpillars to be able to burrow in. And here's the congregations that we're working with that have already joined our cohort, in case any of you are members of them or familiar with them. And here was the tree of life idea, how important trees are. We know there's huge, this is really, putting in asters and goldenrods is great, but putting in a tree is like the king. They support about, 473 species of butterflies and moths in this region. So it's like the numbers dramatically rise with a tree. So how can you help if you're interested? We would love to work with master gardeners on gardening advice. Like I said, a lot of these congregations, they are desperate for more information on site selection and design, overseeing installation and maintenance. I mean, we do work with them to do that, but when we go to scale, like where we really need to do this at, many of them have never done this. So we'd love to have people, if they would like to work with a congregation, to help them with this. And also, if you're members of a congregation, or other congregations, or congregations that might be interested, some of your neighbors and friends, we'd love your help in recruiting more congregations to join the Sacred Grounds program. And I will stop there. Thank you very, very much.
Thanks, Naomi. Hey, Chuck, got questions for Naomi?
Yes, there have been a number of questions posed to the chat, Naomi. Let me start by speaking on behalf of all of us who are here this morning, thanking you for the presentation. Um, it's an interesting new direction, I think, for some of us to think about in terms of things that we're already interested in. And it's kind of inspiring to see what you've managed to put together and how you're organizing these efforts. One of the questions that came in was interesting from a member who's working on reclaiming a historic cemetery. Have you thought about the idea of how a cemetery or a group devoted to the reclamation and protection of a cemetery might be involved in a sacred spaces effort?
It has been brought up. I mean, some congregations have cemeteries directly associated with it, and if they do, that would be a totally appropriate place to have that become a sacred ground. I didn't say that. There's like a designation, sacred ground. If you do these three things, you become a sacred ground. But they're the, and I can talk more about that in a minute. But so if there's a cemetery on the property or part of it, that would, and you plant native plants in there, that would definitely make it eligible. We don't have a separate program just for cemeteries, which has been suggested in many, other has been suggested. So we don't have a special designation for that, but National Wildlife Federation has what's called certified wildlife habitat, and you could always do that with a cemetery.
So again, that would be through National Wildlife Federation,
right?
And it's called you had a term for it, designated.
Well, so we have it's that National Wildlife Federation and it's Garden for Wildlife program. You can just go on our website. I could put the link in. And we have what's called, if you have a home or a business or a school or even communities, a whole town has done this. You can become a certified wildlife habitat by following certain easy steps. And it's an online process, and then you get like a certification. You get recognition for having done it, and you get to be part of a larger community. The ones who would do it as a whole city, like Tacoma Park, and I think, I'm sorry, I don't run that program, but I think Rockville is in the process of doing that. I'm sorry, I know I should know that, but that then the whole, it's a much bigger effort where you get a certain percent of the properties to do it, and then the community is considered, and you can get a big sign, like Tree City, community wildlife habitat sign. But it's so yes, we have it on our website. Any property can become a certified wildlife habitat, which really just means you've done something good. And then if you put up a sign, you're sharing that love and educating other people and inspiring them. You're basically acting as an ambassador.
Well, speaking of that process of inspiring others, one of the questions that came in was about whether or not you've seen evidence of trickle-down effects within congregations of people who get exposed to the idea of the conservation garden through their church and then start to transform perhaps their yards or perhaps their neighborhood green spaces. So have you experienced that in any of the initial churches yet, that trickle down?
Oh, yes, that's built into the program. Maybe I didn't say that clearly, but those native plant starter kits are, so we work with the congregation to create the garden on their own property, which is important because congregations also often have much bigger properties than homes, even if they're in an urban setting. So we do something on their property, but the crux of it is getting the people to do it at home. And so it definitely has. And we've had, typically 50 homes per congregation, but up to 100 and more take these starter kits to start a garden at home. Absolutely. That is the built-in key part of this is for the, congregations are where people are community institutions and they can reach a lot of people at once.
One of the questions and this kind of plays off the idea of these starter kits, was curious about whether you have any particular sources of seeds or plants that you would recommend, particularly for perhaps native plants that are more endangered than others.
Well, the plants we buy our plugs from from North Creek Nursery, which is a wholesaler that we get them at a very inexpensive, like $2 a plug. It really allows us to do this at scale, and so that's worked really well. We don't use seed. We just use the plug, so it makes with greater success with that. So I do not know. I know I don't know about seeds for endangered plants. I don't know the answer to that question. I think I know that there's, plants that are in trouble, but I think that's a whole nother topic. And I don't, I don't know the answer.
One of our members says that their congregation intentionally does not have a physical building on their site, but they have gardeners and those who are interested in gardeners. Would their congregation be eligible to participate in sacred grounds? Would that be a discussion someone would have with you?
Yes. I think that I know that's not uncommon. So, and we haven't quite figured it out, but I think it should work, because the crux of it is to do something on the property. But I guess it depends on where they meet. Is there, if they don't own the property themselves, but they meet in another congregation or they meet in a community center, if there might be, could certainly work.
One of the people is asking about an email address or contact address for you for follow-up. Could you post that in the chat for us?
Yes, I realized I didn't put that as the last slide. I don't know what happened. I usually do. Here is my email, and it's just my name, my last name, and my first initial, and nwf.org.
Wonderful. There have been a couple of comments in the chat about developing a way for our Master Gardener organization to create a process for people to be able to earn some of their service hours by supporting congregations who might be involved. And Steve, I just was going to refer back to you. I know you put a thing in the chat, but my understanding is the process would be for Naomi to attend one of the monthly board meetings for the organization and discuss the possibility of that process.
That's correct, Chuck. Yeah. You're more than welcome to come to one of our board meetings. We meet the third Thursday of each month at 10 o'clock. We're online, although sometimes I will have the meeting in the office as a hybrid, but you're more than welcome to come. And if you want to talk about further collaboration, feel free to talk to myself or Renew, and Carol will put you on the agenda.
That would be tremendous. You cannot, I have to just be honest. I didn't say this in the beginning. I'm not a master gardener. I'm barely a gardener myself. And so that's why I bring in other people with expertise, but we get flooded with gardening questions. And some of them are very typical, like what will be deer resistant and things like that. But, there's a lot to it. And we would really, really welcome your expertise. So I would love to be able to do that with you. That would be great.
I think one of the things that we always have, of course, are the plant clinics and the helplines that we operate through our Master Gardeners group, which people can always contact for advice. But I think some of the folks in the meeting this morning have been kind of inspired to think maybe working more intensely with a particular church or a particular group to advance this work might be good. So if you could arrange a time to meet with the board and figure out if that's something that people could put some of their service hours into, that would be great.
That would be tremendous. really tremendous. And, I think the maintenance, I mean, and if any of you, we are going to be working to put in gardens on these 6 congregation grounds. And if anybody wants to join us for one of them and see what we do or provide advice, we would welcome that. We're going to be doing that starting this summer, where we walk the grounds, or you're welcome to come. If you get in touch with me, you're welcome to come to one of these plant pickup days and see what we do, or join a presentation or something like that. The congregations are encouraged to not just do their members, but also their neighbors. And some of them do, they put it out on listservs and so on. But it's also really about doing it as their own community. So it varies how many of them do it beyond their congregation.
Are you at the point yet where you have developed suggestions for congregations about how to organize and plan maintenance?
So we do a presentation on maintenance, and we have followed up with them. That is, of course, really is the hardest part. And I think that I just think that's the biggest trick. I mean, the problem is the whole issue of, we try to keep the gardens simple so they can identify what are the native plants versus the so-called weeds coming up. And that's the trickiest part. And then the other part, like in my congregation, the problem we ran into was, the landscapers. If you have landscapers hired and they don't know what are native plants, they cut down the whole garden one year because they just thought it was something like, anyway. And then it was really horrible. And then the garden came back, but then the garden got mowed down again. It was amazing, even though we had a fence and everything. It was just very problematic. So there's an issue of like teaching the congregants how to do the maintenance themselves, and or figuring out how their companies that they hire don't, figure out what to do. So that is not so simple. But that is also where we've been encouraging them to like host maintenance days, gardening days, because they have these built-in volunteers. And then but it is more intensive, the follow-up.
Yeah, I think we've all run into that, even with our home gardens, where we can get confused when we're cleaning the garden about what we're pulling out. And I know highway departments certainly struggle with that, since they post large signs saying this is a do not mow area, to try and remind themselves about how to do the maintenance.
Right. And so we do encourage a very small garden to start so they learn it. I mean, some of the congregations were so excited they wanted to do a bigger garden. But I think a small garden is really the way to go. So they figure it out, they learn, and then they can expand if they want.
One of the chat messages mentions an overlap with a program that we're already involved in as a group, which is the Baywise program. And they're curious about whether you're familiar with that, since they're seeing some overlap between it.
No, I am not. Is it your program, or is it a Chesapeake program? Is it around yeah, I'm not familiar. But there's a lot of overlap with this native plant movement, thankfully, has grown, and there's a variety of different programs out there. And so, but I am not actually aware of it. So I'd love to learn.
Steve, I think we've addressed the questions that have come up in the chat. I'm going to turn it back over to you. And once again, thank you, Naomi, for the presentation this morning.
Thank you.
Yes. Thank you, Chuck. Thank you, tech team. And thank you, Naomi, for your presentation this morning. I'll just wrap things up here real quickly, just to remind master gardeners who have not entered their contact and service hours, if you came in a little late, the deadline is January 7th. Please do that. It's very, very important for us to get these hours entered. And classes will be starting up in Montgomery College in the near future, and senior registration day is not far away, January 17th. And with that being said, I wish everyone a happy new year, and I hope to see some of you soon, shortly, face to face, at some point this coming year. Thanks, everyone.